Let's go for it.
I'm ready anyway. Yes.
Let's go for it. Hello, YouTube. Hope you're all doing well. Who have we got online? Do we have it? We do have someone online. Is that Elizabeth, I wonder? We have 2 concurrent viewers, actually. That's nice.
That's
good.
So,
Ted, which is better? Which
what?
is better?
Which is better? Which is better what?
That one, Paul. That's grand. Paul's view.
Paul's view.
That's grand over there.
I need headphones on. Right. Said Fred. Okay.
Ted, the same painting is on your wall as last week.
Why do you want me to change the painting? It isn't the Louvre, are you, man?
It's not a virtual background.
It's not a virtual background, I don't know. It's the real background.
It's an actual background, yeah.
You like my green screen?
I do, it's lovely.
It's a beautiful green screen, yes. Right, everyone's looking okay online, so let's go for it. I'm all prepared for once.
Well done.
Or for twice.
This is good.
I was prepared last week for some unknown reason. Okay, so are you ready, Ted?
I'm certainly ready, Moira.
We're ready to go with the introduction. 3, 2, 1, go.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, Toastmasters, would-be Toastmasters listeners and friends. You're very welcome to the Talk Show for Talkers on irishtalkers.com. Our email address is info@irishtalkers.com. You can also find us on Facebook as the Talk Show for Talkers. And as usual, we look forward to your comments, questions, feedback, evaluations even. You are the lifeblood of this show. If you didn't listen, we wouldn't talk. You can also listen to previous shows on our website, irishtalkers.com. And we also publish the Public Speaking Weekly. This is a roundup of links from the internet. It's all about Toastmasters, public speaking, confidence, leadership, glossophobia. That's a lovely word. So look for the newspaper link on our website. My name is Ted Melanphy, and I'm joined, as usual, by the persuasive and passionate Paul O'Mahony.
Who is very pleased to have your company again, listeners. And I'm also very pleased to have the company of Toastmaster, Mr. Ted Melanphy, and the lady who's going to speak next.
Thank you, Paul. And the lady who's going to speak next is multi-talented, motivating, mindful, sometimes mindless, mercurial, Moira O'Brien.
I think she's mellow today, Ted, actually.
That's a lovely word.
I know. I just realised my microphone was well out of reach. So, yeah, I am mellow, definitely mellow today, as well as all the other M's that you said. Anyway, hello, you.
Well done, Maura. And of course, we are going to have all the lovely things that we normally have on this show. I will be giving you a thought for the week. Paul will be giving us one of those beautiful words for the week that we will try to incorporate back into the show. Paul will be giving us segment 3, which is going to be about, are we in competition mode, Paul?
Well, I'm talking about competitions, and I'm talking about the kind of leadership that is necessary in relation to competitions.
Well, that's very interesting now, because we have a speech on segment 2, which will be coming out tomorrow by Simon Sinek, and it's about leadership. So there might be some learning in that also for us. And Maura, you're going to be speaking also about how to remember your speech or how to construct a speech. Some of these gems that you come up with.
It's how to get that speech into your brain so that it's becomes second nature, which is very important for contest speeches.
Yeah, that's great. That's something we never learned in school, how to use our memory. So you're going to give us some memory strategies on how to remember speeches.
It's not quite how to memorize, but we'll get onto that. When we get there.
I don't want to be spoiling it for everybody. Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds very nice. In fact, I like it. So I have a quotation today, and it's our thought for the week. and it's coming to us from Robin Williams. And Robin Williams was, well, he was certainly my favourite comedian. Such a wonderful, motivating, and what a beautiful character. And what he said was, there is still a lot to learn, and there is always great stuff out there. Even mistakes can be wonderful. I think he could just have left it at that without putting the bit in the front. But I'd say it to you all again so you can absorb it, think about it, and see what way you would react to it. So there is still a lot to learn, and there is always great stuff out there. Even mistakes can be wonderful. Thoughts?
Well, I'm greatly relieved to hear that, because my whole life is a mistake.
Well, look at the learning you're doing.
I don't think my birth was even a mistake. So
Well, that had nothing to do with you anyhow, Paul.
Well, all I can say is that when your existence is littered with mistakes and there's very little of anything else there except mistakes, it's a good thing to hope that there's something interesting about you.
I think that's a very thoughtful answer to give. And you know, you nearly got into the mode of Robin Williams, because Robin Williams apparently was a very sad individual, and he believed he worked so hard to make us laugh. And this is why he made us laugh, because he felt that nobody should suffer the way he suffered.
Yeah.
And you would never have realized it, would you?
No. But it's a case of so many comedians who have had tragic lives.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, if there's so much out there that's worth exploring and knowing and experiencing, Moira, how do you feel about adding in some mistakes from time to time instead of being perfect?
Well, I wish I was perfect. Perfection is something to be aimed at, but can never be achieved.
Unattainable. Definitely, yeah.
Indeed.
But there's so much fun and joy and mirth and laughter trying to reach it. But you will never reach it, because there's no such thing. Well, I don't think there's any such thing as perfection. You can look at a painting and say it is perfect, but for somebody else, then it would not be perfect, you know?
Yeah, indeed.
Well, I, of course, as usual, will disagree with both of you, because I'm going to tell you now something that is perfect. Absolutely perfectly designed. Let me speak about Ted for a minute. Listeners, Ted Malanphy is perfectly designed to be the way in which he is today. Everything has combined perfectly to add up to Ted Malanphy that you're going to hear during the rest of this podcast.
I'm going to have some trouble now living up to that.
How can one possibly respond to that?
Yeah, how could you respond to that? I was just going to say, I'm going to show you some of the mistakes that Paul spoke about earlier.
Well, yeah.
Well, I'm perfectly designed to make mistakes. I appreciate that very much. And so on that note.
On that intransigent note.
Nice one.
Well, I do have sometimes uncompromising points of view, and I have to hold my hand up and say, listeners, if you're going to stay with this episode today, and particularly the one the day after tomorrow, I hope you're going to be tolerant and patient with intransigent. The first thing, let's just start with intransigent. Let me spell it for you. Indigo, no, I won't go through that. INTRAN, intran, SIGENT, sigent, intransigent. And it means uncompromising, it means stubborn, it means headstrong, hard-nosed, and a whole load of other things like that you can imagine. Somebody who is immovable, implacable, These are all words. Now, let me ask Moira and Ted, from what language do you think that word intransigent came into the English language, and approximately when? Quick now,
well,
guys.
right. When he came in the 1520s. No, probably the 1420s actually. And what language? It came from Latin, undoubtedly. Trans sounds a bit Latin.
Well, that's full of mistakes anyway, Moira, so you're definitely...
That means so that I'm going to give you another couple of mistakes. I'd say it was probably the 14th century and it came from French.
Yeah, well, you're another, cluster of mistakes. And listeners, this is something none of you knew. It comes from Spanish.
Really?
And it came in the 1890s. So intransigent, a very modern word into English, comes from Spanish. And the reason I know is that I did my research before. It's not that I'm a native Spanish speaker. But intransigence, the noun, and intransigent, women can be intransigent too. It's not just gents that can be intransigent.
Nice one.
The key thing is that it's a word that you might like to use when you want to wake up an audience. It's not used in everyday conversation, but in English speakers, you will find the word is a bit familiar. Now, during the week, we had a political debate on television from the United States, and we had two competing candidates. And if you were commenting on this, depending on your point of view, it would be entirely possible for you to say about the candidate on the other side that you're intransigent, on an uncompromising, well, let me not take sides in the debate here. But one of the characters theoretically might have said, but didn't say, that you're an intransigent fool. And the other one might have said, you're intransigent in the way in which you interrupt me. But that would be usage.
I think it wasn't an intransigent fool. Actually, what he said is you're an intransigent clown and you're an intransigent liar.
Listeners, forgive us. I think that out of respect for those of you who have a different point of view, let us all acknowledge that in Toastmasters, it is perfectly okay to speak about politics and to speak in a very strong-minded way, even in an uncompromising way, provided you respect both sides and allow both sides to come into the meeting. So please tolerate Mr. Melanphy's strong viewpoint there. He's full
Sorry,
of...
Paul, I should apologise, first of all, for interrupting you, but it was almost like telepathy, because when you mentioned the words intransigent, that particular debate came to mind. So it was like telepathy. And I wasn't referring to one or the other, for the simple reason that I was referring to both.
Well, I wouldn't have called that a debate personally, but that's my personal opinion.
Yes, I know, we learned nothing, yes.
Yes, and you thereby overlooked one of the key people on stage, of course, and I'd just like to mention the facilitator as well, who deserves a mention. Anyway, he certainly wasn't intransigent in his approach. He did his very best to provide a fluid situation. However, I think we ought to be talking about Ireland and Cork and Division A and District 71 in particular, because District 71 are the uncompromising supporters of this podcast.
They are indeed.
And Paul, you give a lovely perspective to Toastmasters when you speak about such a debate as the one you were speaking about. Doesn't it make Toastmasters shine and stand out with their choice of words and the way they formulate their thoughts and put them forward without having to shout and scream at each other,
Indeed. And on that intransigent note, I'm going to call this segment to a close, because time is marching on and we need to allow time to catch up with us, if that's not ridiculous. So join us again tomorrow for Simon Sinek and his wise words on leadership. Bye for now. Right.
Well done, Moira. And Moira, I think the Simon Sinek speech is only about 8 minutes, actually.
Is it? Okay, I did listen to it, but
Yeah, it's nice, actually.
well, I'll rephrase that. I did play it.
Okay.
I don't necessarily think I actually listened to it properly.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But we'll listen to it.
Okay.
I just have a little question, guys. Are we going to make room on the show this week to tell listeners the news of the very welcome approach we've had from a particular person who is a star podcaster in the Toastmasters world? Are we going to mention this, or are we going to keep it quiet?
I think we should possibly keep it quiet until such time as we have made further contact with that certain person.
Yes, okay, yeah.
And hopefully we'll have him on the show in a week or two's time.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Well, even if we don't have that particular guest on the show, I support the chair's decision.
The producer's decision.
The producer's decision.
I should be.
Cheers.
I don't like being a chair. I get such fun.
Well, you're
What
sitting
do they call it? The chair.
in one chair, and you got two behind you. So, as Ted said, you're a chairwoman.
Yeah. Well, you see, in my opinion, Paul, chairman is not gendered. The fact that it has.
Moira, let's not go down that road.
No, I just want to get this out in public on YouTube and on wherever, that woman is gendered female, but it also contains the word man. Therefore, just because a word contains the word M-A-N, the letters M-A-N, does not mean that it is male. Therefore, chairman is
he just mentioned chair.
Chairman is a position, not a gendered person.
Well, I referred to chairwoman, so I suppose I could be accused of that. Anyway, I spent half my life trying to persuade people to replace manhole covers with person-hole covers, and I didn't succeed. So I'm going to pass on this topic because it would reveal things about my past.
Yes, indeed. I think we'd better move on from that, just in case we get some intransigent person coming on and complaining about our YouTube Plus presence. Ted Melanphy.
I think we should be precise about the word, though, because intransigent doesn't mean unpleasant.
No, it means intransigent. It means unflinching, unmovable.
Yeah, hard.
Yeah. So we don't want to take an intransigent. We don't want to take an intransigent position.
Yes, it's a kind of a hostile.
Lots of people are argumentative without being intransigent.
Well, that's true. You don't have to be intransigent to be argumentative. You can be argumentative and listen to the other arguments and eventually agree. That's not being intransigent.
Argument is all about debate, but there's a civil way of doing it and an uncivil way of doing it.
Yep.
And which do I do, Ted?
Very civil, Paul.
Okay, shall we progress? Ted, are you ready to introduce part 2?
I am.
And Mr. Sinek? 3, 2, 1, go.
And welcome to day 2, segment 2 of the talk show for talkers this week. Toastmasters, would-be Toastmasters, listeners and friends. Now, this week we haven't got an interview, but we have a nice speech to listen to by one of my favourite motivators. And this gentleman his name is Simon Sinek, and he's going to give us thoughts on how to be a leader. And this will give us a nice tie-in with what Paul will be speaking on the third segment of the show on Sunday. And that's also about leadership in Toastmasters. So Simon Sinek.
Okay, Ted, right. Just give me a second or two to cue him up and then we can listen.
Okay.
Okay. Because your intro was just a wee bit longer than I had allowed.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. I just throw it on the timeline and whenever you finish, that's when I line it up to. So it's not an issue. Let me just see that.
So Simon Sinek.
Leadership is not a rank. Leadership is not a position. Leadership is a decision. Leadership is a choice. It has nothing to do with your position in the organization. If you decide to look after the person to the left of you and look after the person to the right of you, you have become a leader. Sometimes you're the problem. We've seen this happen all too recently with our new men of science and empirical studiers and these men of finance who are smarter than the rest of us until the thing collapsed. And they blamed everything else except themselves. And my point is take accountability for your actions. You can take all the credit in the world for the things that you do right, as long as you also take responsibility for the things you do wrong. It must be a balanced equation. You don't get it one way and not the other. You get to take credit when you also take accountability. You want to be an elite warrior. It's not about how tough you are. It's not about how smart you are. It's not about how fast you are. If you want to be an elite warrior, you better get really, really good at helping the person to the left of you and helping the person to the right of you. Because that's how people advance in the world. The world is too dangerous and the world is too difficult for you to think that you can do these things alone. If you find your spark, I commend you. Now, who are you going to ask for help, and when are you going to accept help when it's offered? Learn that skill. Learn by practicing helping each other. It'll be the single most valuable thing you ever learn in your entire life. To accept help when it's offered and to ask for it when you know that you can't do it. The amazing thing is when you learn to ask for help, you'll discover that there are people all around you who've always wanted to help you. They just didn't think you needed it because you kept pretending that you had everything under control. And the minute you say, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm stuck, I'm scared, I don't think I can do this, you will find that lots of people who love you will rush in and take care of you. But that'll only happen if you learn to take care of them first. You will be told your whole life that you need to learn to listen. I would say that you need to learn to be the last to speak. I see it in boardrooms every day of the week. Even people who consider themselves good leaders, who may actually be decent leaders, will walk into a room and say, here's the problem, here's what I think, but I'm interested in your opinion, let's go around the room. It's too late. The skill to hold your opinions to yourself until everyone has spoken does two things. One, it gives everybody else the feeling that they have been heard. It gives everyone else the ability to feel that they have contributed. And two, you get the benefit of hearing what everybody else has to think before you render your opinion. The skill is really to keep your opinions to yourself. If you agree with somebody, don't nod yes. If you disagree with somebody, don't nod no. Simply sit there, take it all in, and the only thing you're allowed to do is ask questions so that you can understand what they mean and why they have the opinion that they have. You must understand from where they are speaking, why they have the opinion they have, not just what they are saying. And at the end, you will get your turn. It sounds easy, it's not. Practice being the last to speak. That's what Nelson Mandela did. Remember this. As you gain fame, as you gain fortune, as you gain position and seniority, people will treat you better. They will hold doors open for you. They will get you a cup of tea and coffee without you even asking. They will call you sir and ma'am, and they will give you stuff. None of that stuff is meant for you. That stuff is meant for the position you hold. It is meant for the level that you have achieved of leader or success or whatever you want to call it. But you will always deserve a styrofoam cup. Remember that. Remember that lesson of humility and gratitude. You can accept all the free stuff. You can accept all the perks. Absolutely, you can enjoy them. But just be grateful for them and know that they're not for you. I remember getting off the Acela. I took the Acela from New York to Washington, D.C., and I got off the train like everybody else, and I was walking down the platform like everyone else, and I walked past General Norty Schwartz, who used to be the Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force, the head of the Air Force. And here I did, you see a guy in a suit schlepping his own suitcase down the platform just like me. And just a couple months ago, he was flying on private jets and he had an entourage and other people carried his luggage. But he no longer held the position, and so now he got to drag his own suitcase. And never did it sort of remind me more that none of us deserve the perks that we get. We all deserve a styrofoam cup.
Leaders only have one thing, they have followers. A follower is somebody who raises their hand and volunteers to go where you're going. They raise their hand and volunteer to go in the direction that you're pointing. And so to lead others means that you have a clear vision of a world that does not yet exist, a world that could exist. And by articulating that cause, that vision, that purpose over and over and over again, it inspires people who believe what you believe, who want to see that world built, to join, to go with you, to figure out ways, you know? And so for me, in my work, what leadership means is articulating this world in which the vast majority of us wake up every single day, inspired to go to work, and come home every single day fulfilled by the work that we do. That doesn't mean we have to like every day, you know, but we can love every day. You don't like your children every day, but you love your children every day, right? And so the more I talk about this world that does not yet exist yet, because right now the world we live in, the vast majority of people, 90% plus, don't love what they do. They may like it, but they don't love it. When I talk about this world, it inspires others who believe what I believe and want to see this world built, join up and figure out in their own way how to advance that vision so it becomes real. I despise the fact, I lament the fact, I curse the fact that so few people get to say, I love my job, as if they've won some lottery. You know, you go out with your friends and somebody says, I love my job, and everybody goes, oh my God, you're so lucky. That to me is madness. Everybody, the vast majority, should get to wake up and say, I love my job. It is a right, it is a God-given right that we should love where we work, and we should demand it. We should demand that our leaders provide an environment in which we want to come, where we want to care about each other, where we feel safe to express our vulnerabilities and our fears and our concerns, that we're open to correction and discipline and feedback, that we're not defensive because we know that it's being given to help us improve and grow, and we want to improve and grow. And in turn, we will help others improve and grow. Because when we feel safe, when we feel that our leaders care more about us than a number, they care more about our lives and our confidence and our joy and our skill set, more than some short-term gain, that they care more about our priorities than the priorities of some disinterested external constituency, then we will respond in kind, and we will offer our blood and our sweat and our tears, and we will make sacrifices of all kinds to see that our leader's vision is advanced and that this company continues to thrive, not for them, for ourselves. It becomes deeply personal. It becomes something we love contributing to. I talk about it all the time. Working hard for something we don't care about is called stress. Working hard for something we love is called passion. And I'm tired of listening to CEOs saying, we only hire passionate people. You don't even know what that means. How do you know that they're passionate for interviewing and not passionate for working? You know, every person on the planet has passion, right? We just don't all have passion for the same things. Give me something to believe in. Give me something to believe in. Give me the opportunity to contribute to something. Allow me to make mistakes and try again. And you'll have passion up the wazoo.
That's an interesting ending. Okay, let's now, I don't know how long that actually was, Ted. What? 17
What
minutes.
did he contrast passion with for a second? I missed, I was concentrating on something else. What did he contrast passion with?
Yeah, I didn't make notes.
Right at the very end, he was...
Wazoo, whatever wazoo.
No, it was before that, just a couple of, about a few seconds before that. He said...
Passion and work, yeah.
Everyone has passion. But he said something that was contrasted with passion. Doesn't really matter. I can listen again.
No, he said about work and stress and passion. Was it something having to work with at something you don't like is stress? Having to work with something you love is passion? Along that line, anyhow.
Yeah, it is. It might be, yeah. Oh my God.
There's a stressed out individual there now in the background.
Sorry, oh, there it is. Okay, right. I'm confused. Length and so. Okay,
But you know what,
yeah.
Paul is talking to the dog or talking to us, but we can't hear him.
No, I think the
Oh,
dog. The dog is talking to us.
Are you leading us into the conversation about this, Ted?
Yeah, we are, Paul. You were chatting away there. At least your lips were moving. I wasn't sure whether you were giving commands to your pet or whether you were talking to us.
I was practicing lip reading because that's the new skill Moira is developing.
Oh, well done.
So she asked me before the show if I could please speak without making a sound.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's so important, particularly in the times that we're living in. I've had many people say to me recently, I can't hear you properly because I can't see your lips.
Yes.
Because of the mask wearing.
Yeah, yeah.
How has that anything to do with hearing?
It's a lot to do with hearing, Ted, as well you know.
Yeah. Well, I was wondering, is it because the sound is coming out muffled? Or is it because people cannot see your lips? They can't look at you and see the sound coming out of your mouth.
It's exactly that, Ted. They can't see that important part of the body language, which is the lips.
Yes, right. That's interesting.
Anyway, let us progress. Ted, you're going to bring it back in for discussion?
Yes, certainly. I think there was lots to like about that.
Whoa. 3, 2, 1, go.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Welcome back, listeners.
Hold on. No, we got to do this properly because you didn't start when I said go and then I stopped it and then you were talking. So my fault for not being clear.
No worries. When you do call me back, I'll just be saying comments from yourself and Paul, and I'll certainly love to join in as well.
Yeah, of course. At the moment, I can't delete this. Why not? Possibly because I'm paused. What is going on? Delete. That's better. Okay. All right, Ted. 3, 2, 1, go.
Welcome back, listeners. Now, Paul, Moira and I are going to have a chat. So, folks, Paul and Moira, thoughts on what Simon Sinek had to share with us?
Well, there's a lot of good stuff in there. One of the things that really resonated with me was accept help and ask for help. And that's something which is quite difficult to do. Throughout my corporate life, which was fairly up and down, I made loads of mistakes. And one of the things I learned was that when you make a mistake, you own up to it as soon as you can. And if you're in trouble and you don't know what to do, you don't know how to do it, go and ask for help because people love giving help. It massages their own ego, and at the same time, you get the help you need. But there was a lot of that, a lot in that. Humility and gratitude, I resonated a lot with that. The bit about keeping quiet and being the last to speak, there's a lot of wisdom in that. I love my job. I wish I could have said that all the way through my life. I love my job. I used to hate Mondays, going back to work. But I did sort of like my job, but not until I retired and I started doing the work that I really enjoyed could I actually say I love my work. Isn't that strange? Paul. Paul, you're muted.
It's such a sad introduction to myself there to hear that you had all those years during which your true potential wasn't realized and coaxed out of you. But let me go back to Simon Sinek and just remember his opening statements that leadership is a decision and leadership is a choice. Strong, simple statements that grab an audience's attention. It partly says to the audience, you've made a decision or you're facing a decision. You have a choice to make, or you can choose to avoid the role of leadership. And they're powerful ways of attracting attention from any audience made up of people who are interested in the topic you're going to talk about, which is leadership. And I imagine those two phrases will sound fresh enough to an audience in 30 years' time, if not in 500 years' time.
I agree.
And it certainly were probably fresh to people on the battlefield in Agincourt when they were being told that they had a choice about saving civilization for England, and probably also somewhere in Churchill's speeches is the idea that we have a choice of whether to bow down or whether to lead our country to survival. I'm being signaled there, but let me just support what Moira said, particularly because of its alliteration. Asking and accepting. Very significant way of talking about a particular type of leadership behavior.
Yeah.
Especially in the context where somebody might be, for sake of argument, a president in a club, an area director, a division director, an international president.
Ted, do you have any final thoughts?
If I may add, Maura, sorry, just as we end up that little session there, we have a choice at the moment to show our leadership by practicing health and safety from the point of view of COVID. Every single person has a responsibility on this globe at the moment to show leadership. So do what we're supposed to do, and all of us together will crack this COVID pandemic.
Agreed. On that note, we'll bring this section to a close, and we'll invite you to come back tomorrow when Paul will be looking at how leadership can be intertwined into contests, or how contests can inspire leadership. See you then. Don't know if that's quite what I meant, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's good, John. Actually, the one thing I didn't like about the Simon Sinek piece there, the words were lovely, but you know these segments as if they're taken from different speeches.
Yes.
A bit off-putting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is.
They were two quite different pieces.
Yeah,
more than
different
two.
pieces.
You know, if we had our way again, we might have played just one of them and discussed it.
Yeah, there were more than two, I would say.
Oh, yeah, there were more than two, because there was a bit of music there at one stage.
Yeah, it was a compilation. But I was quite happy with it. It strung together quite well.
Yeah, and what he says is very sensible. And I love the piece where he breaks it down, as Paul said, to simplicity when he says, help the person on your left, help the person on your right. You don't have to be standing at the start of or at the head of an army. It's the person on your left and the person on your right. One person at a time will do.
Yeah.
That's what leadership is.
Yep.
There are a lot of people in Toastmasters who practice the art of chairing meetings. It's one of the things you need to do in society when you're a leader.
Indeed.
Yes.
And Sinek's first section, I thought, led up to some really sound advice about how to chair a meeting.
Yeah.
Very good.
And so that, I think, is a piece of education that all club presidents could usefully consider, especially when they're chairing committee meetings.
Yep. Okay, are we ready, Paul? You're ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Good.
I'm ready.
Okay. I'll bring us in, Ted. Welcome back, Toastmasters, would-be Toastmasters listeners and friends, to the talk show for talkers here on irishtalkers.com. You're very welcome, and we'd like to remind you of our email address, which is info@irishtalkers.com, and our website is irishtalkers.com. You can also find us on Facebook as the Talk Show for Talkers. Now it's the time when I hand over to Paul, and Paul today is going to talk about speech contest leadership. We're in the middle of the speech contest season, and there is a lot of leadership to be found and to be called upon. And Paul is going to give us 3 top tips. Over to you, Paul.
I'll never forget the evening I joined Toastmasters. It was wet, dark and chilly in February. And I joined a club and I was very pleased to join. And not very long after I joined the club, I remember the vice president for education in that club saying to the club members at a meeting, how many of you would like to compete in the evaluation speech contest and the World Championship of Public Speaking? And I remember how many hands went up. And I remember how many hands stayed down. And I remember that the Vice President for Education took note of the hands that went up. And I remember how many people competed in the club speech contest. And I've never forgotten that. And when I went to another club at a later date, I saw the same process gone through. In other words, I saw a club leader ask members in the club if they'd like to enter the speech contest. And do you have any idea how many people enter the International Speech Contest in Toastmasters every year? And do you know what percentage that is of the total membership? Well, it's less than 10%. 30,000 out of 360 or 300 and something thousand members, less than 10%. That means in a club of 20 people, which many would say in this day and age is a reasonably healthy number to have after our renewals have just finished. To have 2 people out of a membership of 20 willing to compete in the contest represents, from my point of view, a significant challenge. Why do so few people enter speech contests? Why do they
I think Paul is taking a telephone call.
I was interrupted, I'm sorry, by my daughter, who I silenced, but so Moira, can you run me back to a sentence where I can continue?
Okay, sorry, I thought you were going to just carry on, so I carried on recording. No worries, no worries. I'll just delete from when you went offline. Okay, here we go.
2 people out of a membership of 20 willing to compete in the contest represents, from my point of view, a significant challenge. Why do so few people enter speech contests? Why do they?
Okay, that's where you stopped. So where do you want to go from?
Can you delete the last 3 words and I'll start again after why do so few people enter contests? Why do they?
Yeah. Okay. 3, 2, 1, go.
The reason is very simple. The quality of leadership in relation to club contests is weak. Why is the quality of leadership in relation to club contests weak? It's because many club leaders cannot think of a really good reason why a member should enter a contest. So what they do is, they do a perfectly reasonable thing, is they ask people, would you like to enter the contest? And the people at the meeting have no idea why it might be of particular benefit to them to enter the contest. So they sit there quietly and they don't enter the contests. There is no clarity in my limited experience about why entering a speech contest is a very valuable step and why somebody ought to do it. There are many people in your club who are entitled to enter the humorous speech contest and the tabletopist contests. Forget about the World Championship. You've got to have higher qualifications to enter that. But a brand new member who's been a member in your club for about 4 weeks can enter the humorous speech contest, can enter the tabletopist contests. But why should they? When nobody in a leadership position in the club has made much of an effort to persuade them, to put it in context. Now, of course, if the person has a brilliant mentor who will be discussing with them at the start of their Toastmasters journey what kind of activities they're going to be carrying on in the club. That's a tremendous help. Obviously, somebody who's nervous as a kitten about public speaking is not going to go in for the humorous speech contest or the table topics. But not everybody who joins Toastmasters is nervous as a kitten. Many people who've joined clubs I've been in have huge talent. So, as a consequence, how many people have joined your speech contest recently? It's too late to change that, let's say. But we do have time as leaders to think about the future and to think ahead to the evaluation contest and to the World Championship. Now, what's leadership behavior in relation to club contests? Well, first of all, has your club committee considered the record over the last 3 years about how many people have entered contests? Have they got a record? Have they got the names? Have the club committee ever asked any of the contestants to make a speech after they had a bit of experience in contests, to make a speech to the club about what benefits they got out of competing in a contest, why they competed? Have your club committee invited the winner of your area speech contest to come to your club and talk about the benefits they got, why they entered? Or, in my limited experience, the most that's been done is that the club committee has urged members to go along to the area contest in order to give support, which is a very, very nice thing to do. So people are asked, would you like to enter? That's about all they're ever asked to do, or the entire discussion. And then they're invited to go along to the final. And why should they bother going along? Because they don't really see the point of contests anyway. So you get a very small attendance. It seems to me that the number of people who enter speech contests in a club is a measure, a key performance indicator of the quality of the club. And that clubs can measure their own performance over a number of years by the number of people who have entered. They can also measure the quality of their own leadership. If you enter a contest, there are various reasons for doing it, and every one of us will have our own reasons. And I'll tell you the one that influences me most, but it isn't the one that might influence you most. It is that when you go in work to do a presentation, you're sitting in front of a load of judges. Your people you're presenting to at work are not going to give you evaluations. They're going to judge you. You're going to be nervous. Your reputation's at stake. It's not like giving a speech in your club where everyone's going to evaluate you, but not judge you, because we do not judge in the clubs. We judge in contests. And you experience nervousness when you're being judged more than you do when you're being evaluated. And in life, we face judgment. And Toastmasters is a place to prepare for life. It's not all cotton wool, cuddles and hugs. Life isn't like that, unfortunately. Toastmasters is to prepare you to go out into situations where you will really be nervous. And that is, for me, the most powerful reason why an individual can put entering a contest on their annual agenda. Their annual agenda. Enough said. I think it's the key message I want to leave you with, and I want to leave all leaders who listen to this with, is that your leadership in the club can be assessed by the number of club members who enter contests during your watch. There's a challenge. Ted, you face many challenges. What do you have to say? You have to unmute yourself because your silent contributions aren't as powerful as your voiced ones.
Thank you, Paul. I like your call to action. I think it's a very important call. And the thing about entering competitions is, you hit the nail on the head, actually. It's completely different than giving an ordinary speech in your club, because you have the anticipation of winning in your club. And then, of course, if you succeed there, you go on and you're in your area. And if you win in the area, then suddenly all of this is leading in to everything you've ever learned in Toastmasters about making speeches. It's important to remember, you made a point, a distinction between the humorous speech and the international speech. It's important to remember that many of the winners of the international speech honed their skills on the humorous speech competitions. And I think that's important to remember that.
Moira, a word from you before we wrap up this pulpit call to action by Paul.
Well, now, I heard everything you said. What made me think was, why don't people step up and take the opportunity of going to a speech contest? And I know the answer because I've been there, done that. It's the challenge of having to produce a speech with no guidance whatsoever, and especially the humorous speech where you're expected to be funny. And that is so difficult for many people, myself included. To be deliberately funny is impossible. Not impossible. It's very difficult for me. To be accidentally funny, yeah, I like that, and I make the most of it. So, and then if you're going to go into an international speech, that's a whole new ball game again, because there you've got to have a speech which is not only has got jokes in it, but it has a message. It's a strong speech to carry through. It's daunting. Now, table topics, I can do that off the top of my head. And I do it off the top of my head frequently. In fact, every week, more than once.
And it's a daunting challenge for a club leader to take the challenge and welcome it.
Yes, I agree, and I know your point here is the leadership point, and I take that on board wholly. But I'm looking at it from the point of view of the speaker and how difficult it is for the speaker. So anyway, I think we've covered that enough. Let's bring this one to a close, and we'll invite you to come back tomorrow when I'm going to be talking about something related to contest too. And that is, how do you embed that speech into your consciousness? See you tomorrow.
Interesting.
It's
also part of the ethos of the club, Paul. It's not just down to the leader of the day. It's also down to the ethos of the club. And some clubs relish competition.
Yeah, I don't know, Ted. I
think so, Mar. I remember when I started in Germany first, we used to always have 3, 4 and 5 people vying to win the club competition.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Hey, Moira, would you do one small thing?
I'll do one big thing for you.
Well, would you mind deleting the very last phrase you used? I think we've had enough on that topic.
Yeah. I would delete it automatically in the edit, Paul.
Yeah. Yes, that's an important point as well. And the thing actually is, Mara, you were mentioning about the international speech, and you have to have a message and a couple of jokes in there. In a humorous speech, The way I look at humorous speeches, you can make a huge point in a humorous speech because you can speak about something that's very serious
Yep.
and something that affects everybody, and you can make your point quicker and easier whilst doing it in a humorous way.
Well, to be quite honest with you, Ted, there should really be no difference between a humorous speech and an international speech.
Yeah, good point.
With a
there is
humorous
difference.
speech, you're not necessarily trying to make people to crack jokes. You're trying to make people chuckle.
Yes.
But you're way off the topic that I started with,
I know.
guys. And
I
that is
appreciate.
really, That is really.
Yeah, but this is a point we wanted to discuss there.
The topic was about getting people to go in for speech contests. It was not an opportunity to contrast humorous speech with.
No.
Okay, right.
And
This is off topic, you know.
Yeah. But all I'm saying is that if we discount the humorous speech and we talk about table topics, the question really comes back to how many people in each of the clubs in our division have entered the table topics contest at club level.
I know table topics is just as challenging. It's a different challenge. It's just one that for me is less of a challenge. But
my point is that it's a measure of the quality of the club.
Yeah.
And I believe that the quality of leadership has dropped overall in all the clubs in our district.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, and I think it's because there is no effort made to come up with a reason why anyone should enter a contest.
Well,
Nobody's ever made an effort that I've heard.
Yeah.
I've never heard a 5 to 7 minute speech on why you should enter a contest, what advantages there are. I haven't heard it brought up in a table topic session. It's a neglected area.
Paul, would you think it might be a kind of a general malaise? It's a little bit like sport, you know. There was a time when squash was very popular. Now people still play squash, but not as much as they used to play squash. And other games come and go like that. And we've mentioned here on many occasions, particularly over the last couple of months on the talk show for talkers, the fact that the Toastmasters promise isn't practiced when a person is being inducted into a club. Is there kind of a general malaise there, or is it just a shift in the way we do things in Toastmasters?
Well, I think kind of it's difficult.
Are there seasons for these things, like?
I think it's difficult to generalize because there are different practices all over the world. And I don't think we have the data about how many people on average enter in clubs. Nobody has a record, I imagine,
in your basket
of how many people entered clubs in Blarney, how many people entered contests in Blarney over the last 10 years.
Right, okay.
We don't know if things are getting better or worse.
Well, Ted, Paul, certainly more people used to, when I first joined Toastmasters, more people used to go to used to enter the contest because that was...
you're right, Moira, and I'm even going back a couple of years behind you again, Moira, there. Back to 2000, and definitely there were more people.
Yeah.
And you never had a situation whereby a club in an area was not represented.
No.
You see, clubs don't have a head of contests, and clubs should have a head of contests. The EVP should have a team, and one of the EVP's teams should be head of contests. The EVP tries to do too much, and generally speaking, I haven't seen an EVP put much emphasis on entering contests.
No.
And that is their job because it's an educational thing. And I very much doubt that. Anyway, that's enough on that. But I think
that's a good call to action,
that it's and obviously it means that the quality of winners is not going to be helped.
True.
But it's letting members down, I think.
Yeah. It's a good point, and it might give the jolt that we need in both the area and the division.
I've got areas in this division. I got areas in this division that have 3 clubs that have got nobody in there.
That's
nobody at all.
That's a pity.
And
everything suffers then.
It's not an accident, but nobody's talking about it.
Pity.
That's an interesting point. Interesting
Yeah.
point.
It's
Yep.
an interesting point, yeah.
Okay, who's going to bring us in? For my.
What
you
time
like-
usually brings you in, Moira?
Okay.
Yeah, but would you like to do it this week, Ted?
No, you can do it, Paul, because I usually do the first and the second bit, and it's only fair that like Mara introduces you, so I think it's good that you introduce Mara.
So what's the topic?
Yeah, when you're
Moira?
not here, I bring Mara.
What's the topic, Moira?
Well, I'm going to talk about, based on an article, which I will have to refer to. I'm going to have to find it too, which is called "How to Memorize Your Speech." But I'm not going to talk about memorizing. I'm going to talk about learning your speech, which is a slightly different thing. But it's coming from a similar background, and it's for speech contests, specifically for
It's
speech
learning
contests.
your speech that you're going to use in a
Yeah,
contest.
yeah.
Now, do you want to have a minute or two while you search for that article? And I get
No, because I'm not. When I say search for the article, it's only to put that article into the website, which I haven't as yet done.
Oh, yeah.
It's one of the things I have left to do.
And it's contemporaneous, Mara,
Mm.
because everybody is in, whether they're going in for or not, are in competition mode anyway.
Yeah, actually, I probably do need to refer to the article. So that's a good point.
Was it on the newspaper?
Have I time
It's
to
online.
get a
It's
cup
all
of
right.
tea?
It's here. You can go and get a cup of tea, and we'll just wait. Yeah, I have it here. It's from the Harvard Business Review. Because I like to do that when I'm using an article as
Yeah, it's a good
a
idea. Publish
prompt.
it as well,
But I'm
yeah.
only using it as a prompt. I'm
Yeah,
using
but it's a good idea. too.
very
It's-
little
yeah.
bits. Obviously, because I've read the article, so I know what they're talking about. But it's mainly my thinking prompted by the article.
Yeah, well, I like the quality of the people you're going to be prompted by, the people from Harvard.
Yes. Well, it's the Harvard Business Review. I don't know. I have no idea who's the. Let's find out who she is.
Maura, I meant to say to you too, I said it to Paul during the week because we were on the phone. Bobby O'Connell, remember she was there she was at our meeting a fortnight ago.
Yeah.
She's from Arizona.
Yes.
She was looking for some information. I put her in touch with Paul McCotter.
Yeah.
And the next day, on the Wednesday morning, I received a lovely email from her. And she was after saying to me she'd send on some stuff that she had done a little bit of research on her ancestors.
Yeah.
This is what she sent on to me, was a book.
All right.
She had a load of stuff that a genealogist in America had done for her.
Okay.
And it gave me all what her ancestors, who they were and how many people in the family and where they were born. It could make a fantastic book. But I
Yeah.
sent that on to Paul as well. So Paul
Yeah.
is working with her now on the Irish side of it.
Okay. Great.
Paul McCotter, that is like.
Yeah. I just looked this woman up. Actually, she's got some interesting articles. Anyway,
Oh, definitely,
let's press on. Sabina Navaz. Okay. Let's get back to it. Are you ready, Paul?
Yes, I'm ready, Moira.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, go.
Welcome, listeners. It's lovely to have you tuned in to us this week, because this week we have a distinguished speaker who's going to talk to us about learning her speech so that she'll be really confident at delivering it in a contest. So I've got a very special person for you this week, the star of all of our podcasts this week. It's distinguished Toastmaster Moira O'Brien. So Moira, what have you got to tell us about learning your speech for a contest?
Well, Paul, thank you for that little introduction. I was just about to turn around and look to see who you were talking to. Oh, it's me. Okay. How nice. Okay, we're in contest season, as we've discussed earlier. And one of the contests that's taking place at the moment is, of course, the humorous speech contest. I hesitated there because whilst we were in the break just now, we were talking about the difference between an international speech and a humorous speech and what a humorous speech is. And this has nothing to do really with what I want to talk about today, but I just wanted to say that a humorous speech doesn't have to be a belly laugh speech. It doesn't have to be something that actually makes people laugh. If you get a chuckle every now and then from your audience, you've achieved a humorous speech. So think about that. But let's get down to the meat of what I want to talk about today. And that is, how do you get that speech into your brain, into your consciousness, such that you can flick a switch and out will come the speech, maybe not word for word perfect according to how you wrote it, but has all the content the way you want to deliver it. So let's try and break things down a bit. First of all, you need to have a roadmap for your speech. What do I mean by a roadmap? Well, it's not quite a stream of consciousness, because that would be misleading, but to say, I'm going to go from this point to this point, to this point, to this point, to a final conclusion. They will be key points in your speech. And all you're doing really is linking individual sections to each other with a prompt, a key word, a phrase, something that is easy for you to remember. Okay, we'll come back on that in a second. When you do your rehearsal, you've written your speech, you've got it into your nice distinct segments, you've written your transitions between segments, and now you're going to rehearse your speech. The temptation is to start at the beginning, go as far as you can. Oh gosh, now I've got to go again. So you go back to the beginning again, and you try it again, and you get a little bit further, and then you stop and you go back to the beginning. What happens then is you learn the beginning of it extremely well, but the last paragraph probably you only rehearsed once because you can't remember, you can't get there often enough. So break your speech down into those individual segments. Forget about the transitions for the moment. Just take the individual segments and rehearse each segment individually. Don't worry about the other ones. Take the first one, rehearse that. Take the last one, rehearse that. Take a middle one. You don't even need to do them in order, though that might confuse you. But anyway, that doesn't matter. At this stage, just rehearse each individual segment and get the concepts that you're talking about firmly in your mind. At this stage, you should be discarding your notes and just writing down prompts. Prompt for each section and a prompt for the linking between each segment. And if you learn by heart those linking sections, you've probably got the whole speech sorted. Okay, so you may need a prompt for what that particular section is about. And that can be one word or a phrase, whatever, it doesn't matter. But if you get those into your brain, you should be able to then speak the whole speech without notes and without prompts from start to finish. And then, and only then, can you start trying to rehearse the speech as a complete speech. I mentioned last week or the week before about our current world champion, Mike Carr, and how he learned his speech. And he said the way he did it was every time he got into his car, he rehearsed his speech. And he would get in his car 2, 3, 4 times a day. And he did this over a number of many weeks. So if you imagine how many times he actually rehearsed that speech, hundreds. Okay, you don't need to do it as much as that. Well, you can if you want to. But the thing about it is, take your time. Don't try and rush it. Give yourself, if your contest is in 3 weeks' time, you should be rehearsing it now. You should have had it written, ready to go, and you should start doing your rehearsals now. And remember what I said, create a roadmap, create distinct segments of your speech, and create links between the sections. Learn the links, learn the individual segments, and by the time you come to give your speech, you should be there. Now, what happens when you dry up? That can be a big problem, especially if you're nervous. And everybody's nervous when they go onto a speech, even experienced speakers. When they go up on stage, and especially in a contest, it's a bit nervy. So it's quite understandable. So prepare. Prepare for being caught out and forgetting where you're going to go. So have something ready. Have your notes on the lectern so you can have somewhere to go. And have a glib phrase. Something like, even the best speakers sometimes lose their way. So just 1 second and get your notes and you can continue. The only time I dry up is when I've tried to memorize a speech word for word. When you memorize a speech word for word, you tend to switch off your brain except for bringing out the next word and the next word and the next word and the next word and the next word. And if you dry up then, the chances are that you are literally going to dry and you have no idea where you're going to go. If you've learnt the speech the way I've told you, which is to look at it as segments, look at it as segments that are interlinked, and you learn those interlinkings, then if you get lost, just think, well, what's the next link? And go on to the next bit of your speech. You may miss out, a few words or a sentence, but that doesn't necessarily matter. Your audience probably never know. So that's it. That's my tip for today. I know it's not easy, but it can be done. And anybody can create a situation where they can deliver a good speech by following these simple tips. Gentlemen, I open the floor to you.
Well, Ted has made more speeches than I've had hot dinners, so I think it's really... Ted, from your experience, how many times do you practice your speech in the car before you give it?
I love the way Moira asked the question. She gives it to you, and then you re-ask the question of me. It's brilliant. I love that. I must use that technique in the speech. Moira, I think the tips you gave were very good. So many of us, myself included, try to learn speeches off word for word. And that is definitely where you make the mistakes. The tip that you gave there, that come up with key points and then link them with, have little prompts or little words that will link each section. I think that's excellent, because if you break the speech into 3 parts, then it's a lot easier to learn one part than to try to learn the whole speech.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I think that's an excellent idea, and that's something I'm going to start using from here on in as to how to remember speeches. That's a great idea.
Good. Now, I should have credited the person who gave me the idea for this particular segment, and it's a lady called Sabina Nawaz, writing in the Harvard Business Review, and her article is called "Don't Just Memorize Your Next Presentation, Know It Cold." Now, as always, I just used it as prompts for what I was going to talk about, but I will link the original article on our webpage if you want to read her thoughts.
Yeah, that's a very good idea. Could you stick it into the chat there, Mara? I'm going to copy that down. And
yeah, I could do that, Ted.
yeah, I'll take that off, yeah. That's interesting.
Right, so that's my...
I heard a really successful speaker talking at a special event, and he gave a speech, and he read his speech, and I was shocked. He sat there, recorded from his home, and he gave a speech which he clearly read.
Yes.
I'd never seen any accomplished speaker ever do that. And it was during some kind of a webinar or something. And I thought to myself, why? What's wrong with this guy? And he explained later that the way he works on speeches is that he gets a speech written down, and that is the only thing he ever does. He reads that speech innumerable times until the day before that he has to deliver it.
Yeah.
He never, ever makes mistakes in the speech. Now, I guess the rest of us could practice our speech. We're trying to at least remember the direction it's going in. But every time we practice our speech, it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Paul, the key thing about that is when you read your speech, you're not being present. You're not delivering it from your emotion. You're delivering it from the brain. When you give the speech based on prompts, on ideas like that, you are actually thinking and saying what you are thinking rather than saying what you have learnt parrot. And that's going to come over much, it's going to come over much more immediate, much more in the moment.
Yeah, and you'll also respond better to the audience, Moira.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
It's hard to argue with somebody, though, who's been a world champion, who has found his own way of doing it.
Yeah,
Probably
indeed.
unique.
Indeed.
And
But the point with him was that it's practice.
And he has it embedded in his mind anyway, you know.
And he said he doesn't necessarily use the same words each time, but he has the concepts and the ideas firmly fixed, and the transition from this to this to this to this.
Actually, yeah.
Yeah. I think any more of this, then we will end up blowing our minds. So let's not try and imagine anymore. Let's call it a day for this week. A week for... No, this is ridiculous. We'll bring this segment to a close. Thanks all for listening.
See you all next week.
And I hope you found everything this week of use, and that you'll come back and listen to us next week. Bye for now.
Bye. See you next week.
Bye, listeners. Cheerio.
Shall definitely edit that ending.
Moira, something else actually. You know, we were never taught in school how to use our memories.
No.
And memory strategies are something that go back even before the Romans went back to Greek time and Roman time.
Yep.
Moira and Paul, I want you both to take part in this little experiment.
Okay.
I'm going to name out 10 items of shopping.
Oh no, I hate these.
I want you to repeat it back to me, Moira. Paul is doing something else, so I'll try this with you.
As
These are
usual,
the things I want you to remember. Are you ready?
Yep.
Right. Rice, sausages, wine, peas, cheese, eggs, black bin bags, chicken, tin foil, and washing powder. Give me those now, Moira.
I've forgotten those already, Ted.
Have you?
Yes.
Have you?
Rice, sugar.
No, there was no sugar.
Wasn't there? Okay.
I never mentioned sugar.
No, but certainly the second one began with S. That was as much as I could remember. And there were bin bags in there. There was...
No, Moira.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you this again.
Mm-hmm.
But I want you to practice memory strategy. Okay?
Okay, I'm listening.
You have 4 corners in your room.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to look with your left eye over the side of your eye, like as if you were thinking. I want you to look at a mountain of rice.
Mm-hmm.
And out of that mountain of rice, you have sausages sticking out.
Okay.
The more colourful, the bigger the shape. The more outlandish you make it, the easier it is to remember.
Okay.
In the next corner, So you flick your right eye towards the next corner. You have a vat of wine, and inside in that vat of wine, you have peas floating around.
Ugh. How disgusting. Yeah.
Okay, that's 4 items now.
Okay.
In the next corner that you're looking at straight ahead, the third corner of your room, you have, you know, the cheese that has got holes in it. Well, I don't know what it's called, Emmental.
Emmental, yeah.
Yeah. And out of the holes in the cheese, you have hard-boiled eggs. So the eggs are stuck into the cheese. Okay? In the next corner, hanging off your door handle, you have a big black bin bag. That's good alliteration. 4 B's. A big black bin bag, and chickens are diving into it. Okay?
Yeah. Okay.
And then on the floor in the center of your room,
Yeah.
you have it covered in tin foil,
Okay.
and on top of the tin foil, somebody has put a small truckload of washing powder.
Okay.
Okay?
Right.
Now, I want you to use the 4 corners and the center of your floor in the room to remember the 10 items.
Rice, sausage, wine. What was in the wine? Can't remember what was in the wine.
Peas.
Peas, you're right, thank you. Peas were in the wine. That didn't stick for some reason or other. Then,
Think of the peas floating in the bat of wine.
yeah, and I can remember the last one, which was the black bin bag and the washing powder, and the Emmental cheese and the eggs. And there's
And-
one more,
Yeah,
isn't there?
but you have to give them to me in the right order.
Okay, well, we
Start again.
We started off with, and I've forgotten that one now. No, it was something in and there was rice and sausage, and wine, and peas,
Yes.
and God, I've forgotten that one again now.
Third corner was the cheese and
Cheese,
the
the cheese, the Emmental cheese, and the egg. It's gone.
bin
Black
bag and chicken.
No, oh, bin bag and chicken. Yes, of course.
Yeah, and
bin
on
bag
the
and chicken.
floor-
The floor
On
was,
the floor, then you had
but yeah, no tin foil and washing powder. Yeah,
superb.
yeah.
Can you give it to me backwards?
No,
Of course you can. What
of
you
course
have
I
is
could, but I don't want to, Ted.
Okay, well, you have washing powder and tin foil. And then you have black bin bags and chicken.
Yeah.
And then you have cheese and eggs. And then you have wine and peas.
No, you have chicken
Have
and
rice.
no, you're not giving it backwards, Ted. It's chicken and bin bag, in that order, not bin bag and chicken.
It's eggs and cheese.
Yeah.
Yeah. Come on,
Bin
Paul.
bag and chicken, eggs and cheese, peas and wine. No, we've started off with tin foil, washing powder, tin foil, chicken and bin bag, cheese, eggs and cheese, peas and wine, rice and no, it wasn't rice. It was sausages and rice. So yeah, it does work. It does work. Yeah,
It does.
yeah.
And do you know who gave us that strategy?
No, tell me.
Did you ever hear of SIM?
Sim,
What does SIM stand for?
simple, idiot,
No.
Mind.
I'm talking about SIM card. No, what does SIM card, the thing with the memories on it?
it stands for SIM card. I
Yeah,
can't
but what
remember.
does SIM stand for?
I can't remember, Ted. But you're going to tell
You
me.
can't remember or you don't know?
I probably knew once.
Okay, well, it is superimposed interface module.
I never knew that.
Did you not? Well, that's what it stands for, superimposed interface module. But where they got the word sim was from a Roman poet and entertainer called Simonides.
Oh, yeah.
And Simonides practiced these memory strategies, and he thought, this is true story, this is true. And he taught some of the senators, if not all the senators, who had to debate and who had to learn the art of oratory. Now, Sim was invited one day to entertain the guests of a very wealthy businessman.
Mm-hmm.
And they were in this wealthy businessman's house, and a payment had been agreed, But at the end of the entertainment, the businessman was trying to renege on the amount of money he was going to pay Sim.
Yeah.
Sim stepped outside the house, and as he stepped out, this had nothing to do with him. The roof collapsed on the house, and everybody in the room was killed. The only person who survived was Sim. Simonides was his name.
Yeah.
True story, you can look it up. And when he was asked, could he remember who was in the room? Not alone could he remember who was in the room, he remembered exactly where everybody was sitting.
Yeah.
And that's how they identified the bodies after, even though they were crushed beyond recognition. And he was practicing the art of memory. And that is why that particular technique is called Loci, or local, L-O-C-I. So he was able to put people in different corners, but he remembered the 50 people who were sitting around the table with him that day. And that's where we get the word Sim from. And that's a true story, Simonides, 2,300 years ago.
Good for him. On that note, we'll stop the stream and say bye-bye to YouTube. Join us again next week.